welcome to another first descendant video. Today I'll be going over my ultimate Freyna shield tank build, which I think she's still one of the best tanker in the entire game that can carry through any hard mode Colossus and Tormentor. So if you do run some group play co-ops and want to help some of your friends out or just be non-solo, this is definitely the build you want to go with if you are using ultimate Freyna. As far as the gun of choice, I'm using the Fallen Hope just because of the unique ability. Now this is not the best gun to use for bossing. If you have another gun that does a lot of damage to bossing, I say go ahead and use that, but just to keep within the synergy of using toxic, I went ahead and used the Fallen Hope. These are the rolls I pretty much put on it, try to do as much bonus damage to Colossus. And yeah, now for the unique ability itself, on hitting a poison enemy, it increases the firearm attack and it applies the poison buff on it. You do get an extra 30% of firearm attack, and you also have some poison takes that it adds onto the weapon. Now the mods for it pretty much is self-explanatory. You're trying to add as much damage as possible. You do have some play around room you can go for. I ended up going with like the multi-hits just to try to add as much damage as possible. But yeah, this gun doesn't do that well with doing damage, but the fact that Tormentor is going to be debuffed to get more toxic damage, and you're adding additional toxic damage whenever you do hit a poison enemy, I figured this would be a good gun to try with. You could definitely solo using this build. You can also pretty much like kill the Tormentor over time, but it might just require like a longer duration of time, like 7 minutes versus like those speedrun builds. Now, as far as Ultimate Freyna herself, we are using Venom Injection, which is the typical builds that you want for the shield tank Freyna. You are using overwhelming HP, so majority of the mods are pretty much HP mods. I'm just gonna go through it real quick. Now, for this particular mod, you can swap this out with perfect anti-venom if you're doing that stalker, and you're gonna be pretty much unkillable. Like, you just don't die. But for Tormentor, we are going with the electric one. You just don't die also as well if you use the build correctly. So yeah, these are the mods that I have for it. Shot Focus is a free slot you can use for anything else, but I went ahead and wanted to add the additional firearm attack. It does remove some skill power, but you should still be okay. And these are the rest for it. Now, why I'm not using maneuver, I want to be able to attach to the Tormentor part and pretty much take him out, and I feel like using the maneuvers you often miss, and then now you're on the cooldown, now you just look stupid in the air. I just figured I'd use a different sub module. Now, as far as the only skill that you need to have active at all time is your second. It does inflict corrosive when hitting an enemy while it's active. Non-corrosive reduces the toxic resistance, so this is skill you need to have on at all time. It does train your MP. That's why we're gonna run some MP mods and have some components around MPs. For the Reactor, I'm pretty much using skill cost and skill cooldown. Skill cost is a must, skill cooldown is not, but this is what I went with. It synergizes really well because I do end up using my skills quite often actually, so having them come back is pretty good. You don't need the Reactor to be fully maxed out. If you don't, you just do a lot less skill damage. It might take a while longer to kill Tormentor, especially if everybody else you party up with is not doing that much good damage. You might just have to run up the time, but I found it that having that skill damage does help a lot. When I was running this while fighting Deathstalker, I had this at 2 because skill power doesn't do anything against Deathstalker. My previous builds, I didn't go over the components because I thought they were kind of like self-explanatory, but pretty much you want as much HP as possible. So we're looking at the max HP that gives you the most, because you're running overwhelming HP that turns them into shield. So put as much HP as possible, and you want to have those MP recovery out of combat, in combat, the shield recovery out of combat, in combat, all those good stuff. So I am running the distorter resolution sensor that I have 2 on them, just to have the additional assault rifle damage. But if without it, you know, it's just little damage that you're just adding. It's not a make or break. So yeah, these are the components that I'm running with. Just shield recovery modifier for that one, but trying to have as much max HP as possible is pretty much the goal here between all of your components. As far as the Arche Tuning, we are pretty much going with the same story. We're adding the HPs as possible, and I did go up and add in the enhanced bonus firearm versus Colossus. Now this is because I'm using the Fallen Hope. If you're using a different gun that doesn't require that much skill, I mean, much firearm damage, you could go ahead and just keep adding on as much skill, much shield as possible. You can even add in some defense. You know, I did some testing around this. This is the best that I pretty much felt like it was a well balanced. But yeah, as long as you focus on HP and having some shield there, I do have some resistance there just to, you know, reduce the electric resistance that I have on. I think this is gonna be really good just to tank Tormentor, but this is, you know, for everybody else it doesn't really matter as much. As far as the Inversion Reinforcement, we do want to add in the antibodies. Upon successfully hitting an enemy, applies the effect, increase all attribute resistance, you know, for 30 seconds, you know, the electric resistance. I think you should want this. I am also adding in some random MPs, so that's always good. And then we are adding some toxic damage on top of it. So that's pretty much the build. I'm gonna go ahead and play some group session for it, some co-op. This build does do a lot of carrying, and you could do this both solo and, you know, group. You know, this build does very well. I do also have that other video where, you know, it's just a quick solo build that could just down Tormentor and be done within, I think it's like 45 seconds. If you want to go that route and have those mods, that's definitely great. If you want to go ahead and help your friends out or just do some community service, this build would definitely be great, and you can use this with, you know, any Colossi. So yeah, without further ado, here's the videos and see you guys in the game. And if you do find this video to be useful, consider liking and subscribing. It definitely helps the channel out a lot. Thank you.